So the electrolytes, you cover them in detail in the book. Let's start off with the sodium and potassium, the balance, and why is it so important to migraineurs' brain?
Okay, so this goes back into what I put forth as the cause of migraine, which is that certain regions of the brain, for whatever reason, run low in sodium, in electrolyte. And one of the reasons why this is happening is because the migraine brain is anatomically different from a standard human brain. And this anatomical difference is that the sensory neurons, which are associated with, of course, our sensory organs like the nose, the mouth, the eyes, the ears, and the skin, the touch, the connections, not necessarily to all sensory neurons, I guess each migraineur is different, but for each migraineur, at least one of these sensory neurons are connected differently from people who don't have migraines. So migraineurs have a lot more neuronal connections. So let me give you an example for this. So say you're a migraineur and you have, like I do, very strong nose. I mean, I can smell like a dog just about. It's really ridiculous. If you take yourself, say you're not a migraine sufferer, and you get a flower, you're going to smell that flower and you're going to find it lovely. You give me the same flower, I may faint from it because I find the smell so nauseatingly strong. And that's because my sensory neurons associated with my nose that smells connect to a lot more other sensory neurons. So the message to me about the smell of that flower is this big. The message that goes into your brain is this big. So I'm getting a lot more stimulation out of that particular message. And as a result of that, the brain works with sodium. Salt is the one that initiates the action potential, which makes the communication possible. That's the electricity generated. So for that, the sodium has to enter the cell and potassium out of the cell. And this causes the action potential itself, the electricity. In the case of migraineurs, because we have so many more connections than a person who is not a migraineur between the sensory neurons, just this alone means we need a lot more salt in our brain. And if we don't have that, extra salt, then our brain may not be able to cope with all that information coming in and passing the information on. And then that region is not going to function. And that's the start of migraine.
So where would that salt come from? Just the diet?
No. And this is very tricky to explain, but there is a big difference between salt that is consumed with food and salt that is taken with water. Your body is taking it very differently. Okay, so this is very complicated, and I don't know to what degree you want to get into it. And I did not spend too much time explaining this in the book that you read. But in the current edition, the third edition I'm working on, I'm planning to explain it quite a bit, but it's very technical, so it's very difficult to explain it fully. But basically, we have a digestive tract, so our stomach, in our intestines, the small intestines, and of course the large intestines, the bowels, the colon. When we eat food, it goes through the stomach, and from the stomach, it goes into the small intestine and all the way through 20 feet of small intestine, absorbing all the food. And the food that is being absorbed this way absorbs whatever salt is coming from the food itself, and that goes into the cells directly, into the cells. But if you look at our blood test, and you look at your electrolyte panel in your blood test, then you're going to see that most of the sodium is in your blood and most of the potassium is in the cells. So you barely have any potassium in your blood. You have nearly all of the potassium inside the cells and most of the sodium outside of the cells. So you have very little sodium inside the cells. So if you're taking the salt with your food, it's going to get into the cells, and that's the wrong place to go. And so that way, you will end up with hypertension and a host of other problems because it's simply in the wrong place. And salt, being an electrically charged sodium, basically everything is broken down in your body into the chemical, molecular, ionic form. So salt breaks into sodium and chloride. They have different functions. And so as this sodium enters the cells, because it's electrically charged, it can't come out. It can only come out if there's a trade-off, an exchange with something else, be it potassium or whatever else. And if that's not coming into the cell, the sodium is not going to come out. So that's going to cause problem because it's going to retain too much water inside the cell. It's going to cause a lot of issues. By contrast, if you're taking salt with water without food, it goes on the same path, but it absorbs really quickly. And it just goes, and the very first pass in your upper intestines goes into the blood because it has no food. It requires no digestion. It's an electrolyte. And so as something that is full of salt goes into your blood, so you're increasing your blood volume, which is the goal. You want to increase your blood volume, not the volume of your cells. So there's a difference between what is being increased. And so you want to add the salt to your water and not to your food. But when it comes to potassium, you want to take the potassium with the food, not with water. So you don't want to supplement potassium. You want to take that with your food, but you want to supplement salt with your water.